Hey everybody, it's Dr. Diane again. I am so excited about our next guest on the summit. This is Dr. Brandy Victory. Dr. Brandy Victory is one of my favorite people in the world. She is an amazing practitioner, a friend, and a colleague of mine. And I'm so excited to introduce her and to get into this really exciting topic, which is that wellness is not a destination, it's a lifestyle. So let me start by telling you about Dr. Brandy Victory. So she leads the movement of helping women shift from overwhelm, from excess weight and pain to accessing their gorgeous radiance of well-being. Once afflicted with bipolar, manic depression, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, hypothyroidism, and suicidal, doctors said she'd be on medication the rest of her life. She's now not only been off of medications for over 25 years, but she lives a vibrant, turned on life, excited to share the message of well-being for those who own their glow. Through intuitive spiritual healing, neuroemotional clearing, embodiment coaching, nutrition, functional health practices, and shamanistic healing modalities, she invites women to their greatness by helping them access their radiant, sacred feminine. Every woman has everything she needs within. We just need to find the key to unlock it so she can shine and thrive. Thank you so much, Dr. Victory, for being on with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. Let's jump right in. And I think jumping right into this topic around wellness isn't a destination, it's a lifestyle. Will you just kind of set the frame for us of what that means to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We grow up, at least here in America, it seems, we kind of are taught in our culture that, yeah, you go to the doctor, you take a pill for 7 days and you're better. Voila, life is better. And you don't have to do anything beyond that. Right. And being that that's the culture we're brought in, it's the expectation for whatever kind of healing modality that we're going for. Okay, I should only have to do this for 7 days and I'll be better, right? Everybody wants the quick fix. And people know on a deeper level that the quick fix doesn't do the job, but still it's the expectation. So being that wellness is a lifestyle, not a destination, it really means that, okay, yeah, like for me, I've recovered from a lot of things. As you read in my bio, I was very sick, and I didn't know that I could recover. I had no idea. Nobody told me I could recover. The doctors are telling me, you're always going to be like this. Keep taking your meds, and something within me, like a deep part of myself was like, this doesn't make sense. My problem isn't a lack of medication. Like I knew that for sure. Nobody's problem is a lack of medication. Yeah, the medications did help keep me stable to some degree. But my root cause was not a lack of medication. So I went out to search out what is the problem? What's the real problem? And so, that's a whole story within itself about what that was for me. But I worked on it and I figured it out and I overcame it. And it was a physical problem. It was a mental, emotional problem. It was a spiritual problem. It was like all of it, right? And so I addressed all those things. But what I also realized and what I try to teach my patients is that, yeah, you address those things and overcome those root causes that are causing those particular symptoms. And maybe that's all you really want out of life. Then that's okay. But make that choice consciously and recognize you're stepping out of the health optimization program or plan or lifestyle, because as the seasons change, as you know, you have know this better than anyone, as the seasons change, our bodies need different things. Here we are in the spring. Happy spring, everyone. I'm so happy. It's finally here. Right? Right? And guess what? Our liver needs a little extra love right now. Our gallbladder needs an extra love right now. You might be finding that your personal empowerment and your will and your courage has been diminished a little bit because we're really working on third chakra, energetic center kind of stuff that needs support during this time. And as this season passes, guess what? We're going to need new, different kinds of support in the next season and all the seasons thereafter. So we have the seasons of the year, and then we have the seasons of our life, and they all need different kinds of support. So if you're going to be on the wellness is a destination plan, you're going to try to recover from a few symptoms, and health optimization and a lifestyle of optimized living and vitality and aging as gracefully as possible isn't on the wellness is a destination. If wellness is a lifestyle, then you're really going to find you're aging gracefully and having vitality as you age.
Thanks. There's so much we can unpack right here. I really like what you're saying about the medication is not the problem. I remember hearing somebody, a doctor years ago, give a diagnosis of a Xanax deficiency. Like that was the official diagnosis. Yes.
Oh, you're giving me chills right now.
Exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, what you're saying around like the medication is not the problem. That is a problem in the fact that there's still so many people thinking that the problem is we don't have the right medication. So just to emphasize that fact a little bit, or, that statement. And then I think the next place to go as we start to unpack everything you just said, I would love to hear a little bit more, as I know everybody that's listening would, about you had so many symptoms, so many symptoms all the way to being suicidal. So it's a major thing to go from that to completely medication free for 25 years to putting together the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual into this like hack your lifestyle type of thing. So I think it'd be really lovely if you're willing to tell us a little bit about your story. And one of the things I encourage all of our Lyme and Mold listeners to really hear in this is a couple different things. One, the fact that we are talking about the process through this of not just getting you out of Lyme and mold, but the process of getting you to a point where you are optimal. And that's beyond just healing these symptoms like Dr. Victory is talking about. That's really getting you to this point where you're living the best version of yourself, which is a prime focus of what you do for people. So tell us a little bit about your journey in healing from all of these different symptoms.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. When I was 14, I began having symptoms of bipolar manic depression. And when I was 19, I went on medication. And over the next several years, I ended up with autoimmunity, digestive disorders, hypothyroidism, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. Like it just kind of layered. Like one would show up and then the next would show up, and I was just getting sicker and sicker and sicker every single day. And nobody knew what was like. There was no diagnosis at the time of all these things. Like at first nobody knew what was wrong, right? So I went to doctor after doctor, and they're like, oh, your labs are fine, it's all in your head, you've got bipolar, stay on your medication, right? And it becomes really frustrating to hear that story, that nobody know, like you think something's wrong with you and nobody else does. So that really makes you feel broken. And, it got to the point where I was like, my greatest successes many days was getting out of bed and brushing my teeth.
Yeah.
Like that was the best I could do. And then get back in bed and watch some more Oprah. And, at some point I came to this thought that, oh my gosh, if this is the rest of my life, I can't do this. Yeah. And so especially if I was in a negative bipolar, in the depressive part of bipolar, I felt like I was worthless. I felt like my family and the world would be better without me. I'm a waste of resources and time, and there's nothing here that's going to help me. I might as well take myself out because everybody else will be better off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
I can remember.
Go ahead, please.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
I can remember having what I thought was my last conversation with God. Mm. And somehow I'm here to tell this story. And within 3 days after that experience, I ran into, by the grace of God, these angels came into my life, Dr. Sones and Dr. Rakowski. Dr. Sones is a chiropractor who practices quantum healing work in the Houston area. And then Dr. Rakowski is a chiropractor who practices functional medicine. And it was those two worlds that collided in that instant of my most time of need, that these two angels, these two doctors held my hands, and they were both like, look, let's get you on a solid, personalized supplement protocol to restore and regenerate your systems that are out of balance. And it was so wonderful to finally have a doctor go, hey, let's take your blood, look at it under the microscope. He let me look at my own blood under the microscope, which was so cool. And he was like, look, here's what's going on. And he told me exactly, like he saw something was wrong. And I finally had hope in my life. And so I got on the supplements and I did his protocol, and I got off my medication. Like, it was like a miracle. The doctor said I would never be off my medication. It was a complete miracle because we restored my gut. We gave my body the neurotransmitters to keep me balanced. And then we restored the nervous system. We did all this restorative work. And now I'm like free of that. But what happened was even though I was off my medication and I was losing weight, I was 12 sizes bigger than I am now. Like, I was huge. I was very obese. And I started losing the weight and I started getting energy back. But what was happening was, if I had left my house for any length of time without my supplements in my pocket, I would have a complete full-on panic attack. Like, even doing things that I love doing, like shopping with my ex-mother-in-law, we were having a great time shopping. And all of a sudden I'm going down. I can't breathe. My heart is just beating out of my chest. I'm wondering if I have to go to the hospital, And so I realized that at that moment, I was like, wow, maybe this is just something I'm going to live with for the rest of my life. Right. So, but then I met Dr. Soanes, and Dr. Soanes helped me understand that there's maybe even a more profound, more important aspect of healing than just supplements and diet and exercise. And what he brought to my understanding was that we have a subconscious component to our healing. And if we're not addressing that, we're not going to get really, like, our level of wellness is limited. So that's what he brought to life for me. And that's what I now share with my patients is let's get your organ systems restored and rejuvenated, and let's address the subconscious emotional component to healing.
It's so beautiful. I really appreciate all of this story. And I know it's something that I can hugely relate to as well as so many other people that are listening and are so sick right now. And that point of like desperation and hopelessness that you're describing is something that I think it's just, unfortunately, it's really common, but it's not really common to talk about, and so I think it's really valuable for people to consider that. And I want to talk more about like this subconscious component of things, because one of the things that I really see so frequently in the Lyme and mold community is kind of exactly like that moment where you're at the store and you don't have your supplements, and and it's like, I might panic, like this is a problem, I don't have what I need. And that's so common in the mold community, especially, where people start feeling better, but traveling, because not knowing if there's going to be a moldy hotel or a moldy Airbnb, and buying a house, like just basically going over to a friend's house, all of this is so traumatic because of the subconscious, largely, like because there's these programs, and there's genetics, of course, and very physical things, but there's also this component of the whole picture of the program that we have around the world's not safe. I'm never going to be able to do these things because of how the Constitution is. So I think these subconscious ideas are really important for this community to understand more deeply about. And beyond the Lyme and mold community, I really think this is important for everybody to really understand these subconscious influencers. So can you expand on that more for us?
Absolutely, for sure. So we have a conscious mind and we have a subconscious mind. Our conscious mind is where we think, we judge, we reason, we drive cars, we have conversations like this. We can even go to therapy and have a conscious conversation with our therapist, get some feedback, and maybe make some changes. I love therapy. It's really a great asset for a lot of people. And we have a subconscious mind that controls our bodily functions. It controls our heart rate, our digestion, our breathing, our hormones, our healing, like everything. There's trillions of things that are happening every single moment of every single day that we don't have to think about. Thank goodness we don't have to go, okay, heartbeat, lungs breathe, digest and digest, hormones pump in the right ratios, of course, nervous system and brain function. What? We would never have a life, right? So we have the subconscious that's controlling all that stuff, which is so fantastic. However, the kicker is that the subconscious is controlling our healing, our heart rate, our breath, our hormones all of it, our detoxification pathways, based on our past emotional stressors, belief systems, traumas, programs, patterns we've learned from our mothers, fathers, preachers, and teachers, and have inherited through our family lineage. So essentially, what that means is that the subconscious has you wearing these rose-colored glasses, tainted the color of your past experience, so you can constantly be on the lookout so that doesn't ever happen again. The subconscious is built for your survival. So it's going to do everything it can do to help you survive. So the main thing is, okay, let's never get near mold again. Let's never get near a man, a sexual predator again. Let's never get, it's whatever the story is, right? And so we live our life as if, because that's what's going to keep us safe on a subconscious level. The problem with that is that we keep walking around in circle and living out the story of yesterday over and over and over again, hitting our head up against the wall. Our conscious mind is going, hey, yeah, I want to get well. Hey, yeah, I want to lose weight. Hey, yeah, I want to make more money. Hey, yeah, I want to feel better. But the subconscious is like, don't do that. It's dangerous out there. It's really, really dangerous. Don't do that. And so it's somewhat of a battle inside our mind of back and forth. And so we don't ever really get to move forward from my experience. I mean, this is what I do with my patients. And I've gone through periods where I've only done functional health with people, or only chiropractic, or only the neuroemotional work and spiritual healing work. And the people who don't address all their parts just don't get the level of wellness that they come to see me for.
Yeah.
So I've changed all that, and I'm like, no, anybody who comes to me has to get it all, because I want you to get well. That's why you came here, and we're going to make sure that happens. So it really takes looking at, and I don't know. Could you do this on your own? Yeah, if you're a great meditator and you spend a long time and a lot of time doing that, you could probably reach some really high levels of understanding about what's happening in your subconscious. For me personally, I need help with that. Even to this day, I get my own subconscious healing work and my own spiritual healing work, because I just want to continue to find what my limiters are. I just worked on a few yesterday, or a couple of days ago, that I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that was in there from when I was 6 years old, still. Yeah. And so I feel so much better. And I feel like, oh, I took the paper, and the fire was burning this morning, and I had written down a bunch of stuff, because I always take notes before I go into my own session. And I'm like, okay, these are the things I want to work on. I think here's my limitation. And then I put them in the fire today, and I was just like, yes. Now I can move on, right? And so that's what we do when we help people clear the subconscious component to healing, is we help them move on from that old story. We don't change yesterday. We don't erase the memory. But what we can do is we can remove the charge. Yeah. So if I'm not charged up about how my mom treated me when I was 6 years old, how much freedom is there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so much freedom. So does that answer the question?
Oh, completely. And I think there are like a couple different comments here. Like, one is just on this like concept you're bringing up around like unpacking this idea around kind of needing help and not doing it all, yourselves. And I was talking to a friend yesterday about exactly this, about how so many people wind up being like, well, okay, well, I'll read this here, and 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 I'll put it all together. And most people that I know that do that still haven't figured it out, because right. It really helps to have that coach, that somebody that's like that outside eye that can kind of see us from a more objective standpoint, because the way we see ourselves is super subjective. And so, somebody that can come in and do what you're basically saying around provide that guidance, provide that clearing, provide that way of moving and processing these traumas, these patterns, these beliefs, these subconscious things that we can definitely do that ourselves. But to have that help is, for, I think, probably like 99% of people, really, really, really a positive thing, a very, very positive thing with making these changes. So that's one comment I have on what you're saying. And the other comment I have is just in regards to these patterns and these traumas around like removing the charge. So like for like mold people, like the way I interpret that in like the mold community is like, So maybe we could, there are, and I believe with what I've seen, there are ways where we can become less and less reactive to mold. But there still could be some level of reactivity. And even if there's not, there still could be that charge. So to be able to travel and be like, wow, okay, well, maybe it's possible that one would encounter a moldy place, but because there's no charge, it's like, oh, I have symptoms. I'm going to, without raising my nervous system, without turning down my immune system, without turning off my hormonal system, I'm just going to take care of this and move on with my life. And maybe I put myself on a detox protocol for a few days and then I move on and it's not a problem. And that's what we're talking about here, right? Is by removing that charge, we can respond to our life instead of react to it.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, another thing I want to come back to that you kind of introed for us today is this concept of seasons and as well as life cycles for how we take care of ourselves. And to kind of bring that back to the topic that we're really focused on today of wellness isn't a destination, it's a lifestyle. I think this is super important for the community to really hear, because I think it's so often with our culture that we have these symptoms and we're like, everything is going to be awesome when I just get rid of these symptoms. And the fact of the matter is, these bodies aren't perfect. Like these bodies are like, we're not the same day to day. And like you kind of alluded to, we're not going to need the same things in one season of our life or one season of the year as another. So what sort of advice do you have for people in thinking about, okay, how do they put together ideas around living and changing their protocols, their wellness, what they're doing in accordance to seasons, in accordance to life cycles?
It's a really great question. And I wish I had an easy answer. I think the easiest answer, and the one I'm really what's being called forth for me to say right now is work with a practitioner. I mean, whoever it may be, find someone who understands how to relate, be it an acupuncturist, a functional health practitioner, someone who understands holistically, naturopath, what's happening with your body and the changes that it goes through throughout the seasons. I mean, I work with my own because I can't do my own, right? I mean, I'm pretty good at doctoring myself, but again, it takes someone from a broader perspective to see from the outside in where your blind spots are and how you might be able to use some help. Outside of that, the second most highest thing I would say to do is to really learn how to listen to your intuition and follow its guidance, because your body will tell you everything that it needs if you're willing to listen to it and follow its guidance. So a lot of women, I work mostly with women. I have a lot of men too now, right? It's weird. They come in waves, but the women that I work with, the women especially, are like, I don't know that I can really hear my intuition. Like I hear that a lot. You hear that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
All the time.
So interesting. So, so ideally, if you're one of those people, I would recommend getting yourself into some embodiment practice, be it yoga or sensual dance or somatic therapy with a therapist, so that you can start to tune into your own body's wisdom, because all the answers lie there and you'll know, you already know. So you'll notice that in this winter, which we just left, you were probably eating more beets and root vegetables and stews and warm food, right? That's your intuition telling you what you need. When spring comes and summer, you're going to be eating more fruit and juicy vegetables and maybe raw foods, right? So you already have it innately. Everyone does, but we really got to attune ourselves to it so we know what our body needs.
Do you tend to look at the body in ways where you recommend, say, certain types of exercise or different types of the year, like different types of their year, certain types of, say, spiritual meditation practices? Do you have anything like that you find is helpful to rotate through as far as seasonally?
I believe so. Some people, like I have a couple of patients that are really kind of what I would call straight. Like they like a pattern and they want it to be in the box, and that's the way it is, right? And if I can get them in the box and have them do that every single day, they're happy, right? So some people need that. My personal personality style is someone who needs a variety of things. So what I was doing this winter was actually a lot less exercise than I normally do. For a lot of reasons, but I just wasn't called to. And I just really try to follow my inner yes on that. I was doing a lot of Kundalini in the winter, and now I'm kind of moving into an Ashtanga flow series and chanting. So, I absolutely believe that we should shift what's happening if that's your nature.
So then my other question for you is for the Lyme and mold patient, as well as really anybody with chronic disease, they've gotten fairly well. So they're, let's say they're in their 90 something percentile of functional. So they're doing pretty well. They might have a bad day, here or there, like the rest of us humans, but they're doing really well. And they're working with somebody to think about some of these seasonal rotations and changing diet and changing nutrients and changing exercise. What else do you feel like from a continuing to make health a lifestyle and not a destination? So continuing to optimize, to refine, to learn, to improve our body's vitality. What other like broad or even specific things do you think people need to be thinking about?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. I'm one to address all my systems throughout the year. Like that's my goal, at least. I can't say it actually happens because sometimes I have to address my adrenals and my thyroid over and over and over again. Right. But if you can just maybe even just look up online, like, okay, what are the best foods to eat in the spring? What are the best foods to eat each season? And what's the best exercise style for this season? I mean, we kind of already aligned to that stuff. In the summer, we're moving a lot more and going a lot more and swimming a lot more and all those kinds of things. Just the constant, I think for me anyway, to keep myself moving in the direction of optimized health and well-being, I just want to keep getting better and better and better. And yeah, do I have symptoms sometimes? Yeah, absolutely. Things start to show up and I have to check myself, right? I'm like, okay, where am I letting my guard down? So you have to just kind of be aware of, okay, you know what? Yeah, I'm feeling better. I'm here and I'm doing it. But then if you just kind of like let that be good enough, likely you're not going to feel great in the future. So, do your personal education, your work to study and learn, like, what does it take to support my own personal body? What is it I need? And again, coming back to your intuition and going, okay, am I letting myself down here? Should I deepen my meditation practice? Should I ask myself some harder questions or ask other people some questions about where they might see me? I just did this actually, where they might see me dropping the ball in my life or in my well-being or becoming a victim, And so, it's just really, wellness is not a destination, it's a lifestyle. So how are you going to take one tiny step today to improve your well-being? And that might be breath work. It might be movement. It might be studying something. It might be reading a book, right? Or hanging out with your girlfriends.
And that's probably another area where I think the intuition can come through, right? Where it's like, okay, well, we've all these different activities, hanging out with a girlfriend, meditation, reading a book. Some of the intuition probably comes in with checking in with the body around like what sort of internal activity do I need most today? If I only have 5 or 10 minutes, what activity can I do with these 5 or 10 minutes that is going to be most beneficial for my health? Right.
Yeah. And having the willingness to do that, because this morning I was boom, boom, boom. And I was like, okay, I want to chant and I want to get my yoga practice in. Okay. So I chanted for 10 minutes and I did a 12-minute yoga practice. Would I like it to be longer than that? Yeah. And would it be really easy to go, oh, I don't have time for any of that? Yeah. But guess what? I probably would have been a huge freaking mess if I hadn't done any of that. Right.
Where do you think, like in the concept of say lifestyle being more of a wellness being more of a lifestyle, not a destination is what I'm trying to say. Where do you think the concept of that really fits into the idea of like things like guilt and shame and not giving ourselves a hard time for like what you're talking about? Like, well, I really intended on doing that hour of yoga today and I got 12 minutes in. So yeah. I feel like that often comes up for people with trying to do these lifestyle things. And we have these days where we don't get to it. And women especially, I think we have a tendency to do this more than men, from what I've been able to gather around bringing like guilt and shame to, I didn't get to this today. Oh my gosh, like, comparing ourselves to where we think we should be. So where do you think guilt and shame play? Like, how do you think they play a role in all of this?
Thank you for that. It's such an important topic. Yeah, so there's two parts to it. One, I would say just get your pen and paper out and write down, like, if I had the perfect life and my day to day, what would it look like? And the second question, when it doesn't live up to that and you have the guilt and shame story, ask the question, whose story is that?
Mm.
It's likely something you've inherited from your mother and your grandmother and her grandmother, right? And so you get to choose. Like, that's, we're a complete choice about how we want to experience our world. And yeah, maybe we have the pattern of guilt and shame, and there's a lot of subconscious work that I do with women around that as well. But just to kind of give yourself a little leg up in this regard, if that's your MO, I used to be have so much shame in my life. I mean, I had OCD with food, and so I would sneak food when nobody was looking, and then I would feel so terrible, and then I got bulimia and I'd throw it up, and then I'd feel bad about that, right? And then it was just like this vicious cycle, and I couldn't seem to get out of it. So I did a lot of subconscious clearing work on the whys behind that and getting out of those patterns. But I also had to like really look at, wait a minute, that's my, like, I still sometimes hear a story come up in my head, and I always ask, whose story is that? And it's often my mom's, I'm like, okay, bless you. I send my mom some healing, clear it from my space. Okay, I don't have to be that, right? So it just takes a lot of awareness.
So it sounds like there's almost like you would recommend, almost what I'm hearing is like a 3-step type of process of first, like bringing the awareness to it. And then second, saying like figuring out like, well, whose story is this? Where is this rooted? Where does it come from? And then thirdly, it seems like almost like a concept that I'm hearing around, well, I get to choose my own reality. So do I want to hang on to that story, or do I want to create like a new story? Is that right?
It is right. Yeah. And there's often things when you're creating new story, it's, a lot of people say, I say my affirmations all the time. They're just not working. Like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, right. That
Yep.
doesn't necessarily just work like that. We've really got to do some processes, at least from my perspective, and what I've seen in my practice and from my personal health. We've got to have a process in place to where we can repattern our own habits, lifestyle, and thoughts. So, if you do something that's creating shame, then like I was obsessively eating, then okay, you did that activity, and what are you going to do to help yourself let go of the fact that, okay, so you did that, so what, like, that's finally, I got to that place where I was like, okay, so what, I overate, big deal. All right. And then if you find yourself like, I'm just going to use the hiding eating food experience, because we're talking about that. If you find yourself doing something that, in secret or hiding, can you maybe not do it and then bring that food out later? Like at some other point, maybe this might be a process, but can you bring that out and eat it in front of somebody, even though it's so uncomfortable? Right. So these are the kind of practices that I teach people, and self-healing processes, and how to clear their own energetics, and, how to enhance the vibrational frequency of their body and their mind, so that there's coherence in the system.
It's so great. One thing that I would love to hear more about in particular here is, I think what you said around this affirmation component of like, affirmations don't work. And I completely agree with you. And like what I've seen, like affirmations are often like one piece of an entire puzzle, but it's just like somebody being fatigued and being like, well, I was deficient in a B vitamin. Like, okay, but you also have a parasite. You also have a thyroid problem. You also have an adrenal problem. So yeah, it's not super surprising that one piece of the puzzle doesn't work. And that's kind of how I think affirmations are like, they're this piece of the puzzle. So if people are identifying like, okay, well, they want to repattern something, they want to repattern the shame and the guilt around not doing an activity such as meditation or yoga, like we're talking about, and they're having the shame or guilt, and they figure out what they want to believe, and they're starting to do these affirmations. I think it'd be helpful to hear a little bit more around like these other puzzle pieces. And I know some of them are like working with other practitioners that can help clear the energy, and all of that. But from a more, from the self-empowerment component, obviously there's other components in this, but from the self-empowerment component, what other things do you think people can do besides like the affirmations to really help reprogram these beliefs around self and shame? Or shame and
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
guilt.
Yeah. 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 So, journaling, I think, is the most powerful thing,
Yeah.
honestly, because you can write it out. Like if you're saying an affirmation, let's see, I am well. Let's just say that I am well.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things you might want to explore is what makes me feel not well, and just start like free form, let free flow, let it come out, blah 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 blah, whatever story it is. And you might get down to a kid at school pushed me or whatever, and it's just writing it out, like does something to our consciousness to where we can be like, okay, all right, I see that. And then it allows us to have the freedom to move into a different place. But if we're just constantly shoving the Sally pushed me at school and no one likes me under the rug, but we're putting a smiley face on it in the form of an affirmation, it just keeps fighting against itself. So you got to get under it. You got to get under the why. One of the really great practices that I teach my patients is that I'm gonna try to get this because it's not quite in my head right now. Is to write out a story. If I had never been hurt in my life, who would I be?
Mm.
And it's really, really powerful to start to come into the plate from that perspective. It's not that I just want to be well, but who would I be?
Yeah.
And then from that place, it gives you more of a stronger foundation. Instead of just, I want to be well, you have clarity about who you desire to be in the world. And then you can choose how you're going to take action to make sure that you're showing up in that way.
Yeah, I love that. I like this concept of getting under it and not just putting the smile on top of it like you're speaking. I think that's so, so, so valuable. So this other concept that you're bringing up for me is that when we go through chronic disease and chronic illness, one of the things that happens is like identity. So like what I'm hearing and what you're saying is like, okay, well, I don't have the trauma. I don't have the story. I don't have the sickness. I don't have, the past. So if I didn't have any of that, if I'm not sick, if I don't have these programs from these thinking process from my parents, my grandparents, who am I going to be? And like, to me, that's like saying that, well, when we're moving into health, when we're moving into wellness as a lifestyle, not as a destination, where we're moving into optimal well-being, we're actually letting go of an identity and stepping into a new one.
Yeah.
So thoughts on any other follow-up or comments on that?
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because the sad part is people identify with their illness. And so to let go of the illness means letting go of their identity to a large degree. For most, I'm not saying this is everyone, but for a lot of people, it means something. And when I was working through my own stuff, and I share all this with my patients too, to help them get clear on what is it that's their, like, one of the primary questions that I have on my intake form is, what's the benefit of having your sickness?
Yeah.
Like, how are you benefiting by that? Because there's a benefit or you wouldn't have it. Like, it's serving you in some way. Yeah. And people do not like to hear that. And they're probably like, their hairs are all up right now when I say that. But the truth of it is, there's a reason for everything, right? And when we can get clear about our why, like, oh yeah, when I was sick, I felt like I got more love. Like, I was lovable when I was sick. I was lovable when I was weak, right? And so who wants to give up being lovable, right? So I had to see that was there for me to go, how silly is that? Yeah, that kind of love is not the kind of love you want.
Yeah. 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 I think this is such an important concept, because it's like the concept around victim versus like responsibility of oftentimes when we have these like chronic diseases, we are victims on many ways. Like, we have these imbalances, we have these things passed on by our parents, we get infected by an insect, we are around toxins that we don't have control over. So in many ways we're victims, but the way, because I totally agree, it's like really important to unpack this, like what is the benefit of having this disease. But I think like the way that I think oftentimes people hear this is like, well, that means like, then we're saying like, well, you caused your disease. And that's not what we're saying here. It's more saying like, we have to remove the blocks to get people well. And if there's some block where we get sick and we're holding on to our sickness in part, there's other reasons, but in part because it's actually serving us, then that can actually be that block to healing. And we're just trying to look at this holistically and remove all blocks.
Yes, yes, absolutely. One of my teachers, Dr. Sue Morter, she is an amazing woman. She talks about the cosmic bus stop. Have you heard this story?
I have, but I would love to have you share this.
I love the cosmic bus stop. So, so basically we're before we come into embodiment, we're in the field, right? And we decide, okay, I'm going to become a human again. And I'm going to go there. And we all come here to learn and grow as spiritual beings on this planet and to expand and be better people and better spiritual beings. And so we're in the field and we're deciding to come through. So we go to the cosmic bus stop and we're like, okay, all right, I'm gonna become human again. And all your friends are there and you're like, hey, you're going back. Yeah, I'm gonna go back. Oh yeah, what are you gonna work on? Oh, I think I'm gonna be working on becoming lovable. What are you gonna work on? You know what? I think this time I'm gonna work on forgiveness, not like a level 3 forgiveness, but like a level 10 forgiveness. Ooh, that sounds like a big one. Yeah, it's going to be a big one. Hey, you know what? I was wondering if you would play out a role for me because I'm going to need somebody to forgive. Well, how are you going to do that? How are you going to play that out? Well, I don't know. It's going to have to be something pretty big, like maybe somebody gets in the car and drunk drives and hits my car, puts me in a wheelchair and kills my children. Whoa, that's pretty heavy. Yeah, it is. But boy, I'll really be able to, that's like level 10 forgiveness work right there. I think I can do this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to need somebody to be that drunk driver. Would you play that role for me? Whew, I don't know, man. That's heavy. Yeah, I get it. Well, let me think about that. And then somebody comes back and says, if I did that, that would really help me work on self-forgiveness and self-love. I think this is what I want to do. I'm going to do this with you. Okay, cool. I'll see you over there. And then we become embodied and here we are. We're here to learn self-forgiveness and self-love and forgiveness at a level 10, right? But even though we have the idea that it's going to be something like somebody drunk driving and hitting my car and doing all these things, we don't really call the shots on that, right? We're like, okay, this is the thing I want to work on, and Spirit's going to give me what I need to make that happen. And the perfect people are coming into my life to help me achieve that goal, to help me learn those things and grow and evolve as a spiritual being on this planet. So we don't get to call how it happens, right? But we can trust. We can learn to trust that there is this divine influence and that there's this coalescence of beings and people and energy and things that come into our existence while we're here to help us along the path so that we achieve that goal.
Yeah, it's to me that communicates. I love that story. And one of the things it communicates is just almost like trust and belief that there's reason for all of our struggles. And there's something to learn, out of all of our struggles, there's some sort of like nugget to learn. And we even see in research that like we can have like two people can go through the exact same struggle and one person can find that nugget of what they're learning and orient their mind to the nugget of the silver lining in a horrific situation. And another person can go through that same struggle and not find that silver lining. And there's physiological changes on their body just from finding that. So that process of saying, okay, well, we're going to find that silver lining and we're going to learn and we're going to grow. Oftentimes the silver lining is how we're going to grow, how we're going to improve as a human being, that sort of thing. And I think aligning to that is such a beautiful reminder for people in their healing process, that when we realign to the silver lining and the challenge, not only do we grow and not only does it maybe help us from a spiritual standpoint, it actually even helps us from a physical one.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would just say to that, yeah, everybody struggles, right? Nobody
Yeah.
gets away not struggling.
Yeah.
Everybody struggles. And there's one thing that I know about all people want to help other people. Like
Yes.
Roger, my boyfriend, he's in law enforcement, and one of the things he's seen in his lifetime is that there was a fire in this area, and there were some gang members around. The gang members actually came and helped put out the fire in this community where they were fighting, and so it's such a poignant story, and it just really brings home the reality that it doesn't matter what the story is. We want to help each other, and if you can come to a place where you can realize that your struggle, and this doesn't mean to stay in it, but if you can realize that your struggle is helping someone else, that your ability to rise up in your life can maybe help someone else, then it's so worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's sometimes the motivation that we need to do the work when it's hard, is realizing that, oh, I can utilize the struggle to help other people. And I think can serve as a lot of motivation on the really hard days.
Yeah. And we don't have any clue how wide our vibration goes. Like we have no idea. You could just be standing in line at the store and just say something to somebody or comment or something, or just the way you hold yourself because you've just are starting to feel better, or you're starting to feel more empowered or more confident in yourself. And that lets somebody else who hasn't felt that way feel that way because they're getting a vibe from you, right? And so the more that we can bring ourselves into a state of higher consciousness, of higher confidence, and being well on an emotional mind, body, spirit level to at the best of our ability, and know it's enough, then we have a far-reaching impact farther than we know.
Yeah, it's like the butterfly effect. I was just talking to a colleague that I had just interviewed and offline, and he was talking about this book called Epidemics in Society, and which basically, I guess, according to, I haven't read it, but according to him, was really looking at when we have these tiny little, not tiny, when we have these epidemics, is at a large thing, but they're from these tiny little microbes. And he had this story in this book of how, like, I can't remember if it was what microbe it was, from an epidemic standpoint, if it was smallpox or what microbe it was, but there was a microbe that basically, like, because of this microbe and the way people were dying, led to certain wars, and then certain countries were fighting, and somehow this author connects that to the U.S. purchase of Alaska. And this is from, like, right. And this is from, like, a little tiny bug, right? And so it's just like an example, another example of, like, what you're talking about is like, wow, these effects that we have on just like, I'm going to use this process for my own healing for good. And I'm going to tell one person at the store about, like, how my healing has changed my life. And that's going to inspire them. We think we maybe just had a conversation. We think it's just like, okay, a bacteria or a virus, which clearly in the current world we know has impacts, but impacts to the level where that we're like acquiring property as a nation. Like, the impacts are so beyond comprehension.
Yeah. 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 So which brings to mind for me is that it's more than just a desire, but a responsibility. From my perspective, it's a responsibility for us to rise up, to overcome, to become well to the best of our ability. Does that mean you'll never have a symptom again? No, not, of course not. Everybody has stuff, and there's things to do about that. But if you're on the constant evolution of improving yourself day after day and optimizing your life, guess what? You're impacting the world in the most positive way, and that's a purpose-driven life.
It's, yeah, so well said. So well said. I want to hear a little bit more. Will you tell us a little bit more about your ideal client, about who's a good fit for working with you, how you tend to work with clients?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. I do work with men, but my practice is mostly geared around women, just simply because I am one. Most men don't want to work on their embodiment that much, but, but women recognize that it's important to be embodied. So it's really a fun practice. I really love working. The women that come to me and the patients that come to my office are people that are really ready for true change to happen, that are tired of being stuck in the eddy of life and wondering if they're ever going to get out, or if their life is just going to be chalked up to XYZ story. And they're ready to make that leap. They're ready to actually take action and do it. It's not ever easy making change in your life, but it's so much easier when you've had somebody like myself who's kind of cut the path. Like, I didn't have someone who's been through what I went through show me the way. Like, I had to figure this out, right? And so I carved a path, and so people don't have to struggle nearly as much as they have been, or hopefully not as much as I ever did. So people who are ready to take action and are looking for change in their life, and they understand that, optimizing their health and their lifestyle and their organ systems are really going to benefit them in the long run.
Yeah, beautiful. And one of the things that that all of our listeners will hear me say throughout the summit is, I think, the importance of working on all of these different aspects of health. So like, even if somebody's listening and they're not working on some of these components, and they're working with somebody they really like I encourage them to call you and to reach out to you, because all of these different areas, I really do believe with my whole being that we get to this optimum place. We heal from these things. We develop this lifestyle of really deeply embodying everything we can be when we're working on all these different things. So I just want to encourage our listeners that even if some of what you've said, they're like, oh, I have this, like to if they want help in expanding and having more of this whole picture, to reach out to you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, our consultations are complimentary. So if you just have a few questions and you want to see if it's the right fit, you can certainly give us a call, and we'll have that conversation with you.
Awesome. And I know you're giving away a amazing checklist. It's a well-being checklist, and this is something that you guys can access at a link that I'm going to put in Dr. Victory's speaker dashboard. So make sure you go there. But you were telling me about the well-being checklist a little bit before we got on today, and it sounds so exciting. So tell everybody about what this is.
Absolutely. Yeah, the well-being checklist is actually something I still use in my life. Not every day anymore, because I've kind of got it together, but if I find myself stuck in a little bit of a rut, it's so wonderful. And so for people who are especially coming into and optimizing their wellness, and they're trying to put into place lifestyle habits or healthy habits that they can't quite get down, this is the perfect thing. It's going to help you make it a lifestyle. So basically, you fill out the chart, like, what are the 10 healthy things that you want to be doing in your life on a day-to-day basis? And then every day you give yourself a check or a star. And at the end of the week, you kind of give yourself a grade. So, like, one of the things that the last well-being checklist I was working on, the things I really wanted to put into place was drinking 2 green smoothies a day and getting bone broth in every day. Those are the things that I just somehow can't get into or was having trouble getting into my diet. And so I would do my well-being checklist, and I was doing everything except those things, right? So I'm saying this because, some days I would get like a 70% because I wasn't doing the 3 things. And it's not an opportunity to shame yourself, right? Like, this is actually a really great process to do with yourself if shaming yourself is something that you do, because you get the opportunity to go, okay, I don't have to shame myself for this. I can actually celebrate that I got a 70 today. And where am I going to tune myself up? And when you can see it laid out, it's so obvious where you want to pick up your game, and it just makes it so much easier to become a lifestyle.
Yeah, I love it so much. I know there's research that's like shown that when we start tracking and writing down our food as humans, that people naturally tend to just like make better decisions. So, it sounds like that's another added bonus of this checklist you're offering, is that just by like writing this down and kind of bringing more attention to it, really allows the subconsciousness to see what's happening. And the research shows that when we do that, oftentimes as humans, we just start moving in that direction, just because we can't kind of talk ourselves out of and say like, well, no, I think I'm doing pretty good. It's like in our face.
Yeah. And if you really want it to be part of your lifestyle, then why not do that, right? Otherwise, you're just kidding yourself. And just, if you feel like, oh yeah, I should be drinking bone broth every day, but you're really not willing to make the effort to do it, maybe it's not for you, like, get real with that. So you can stop having the insanity conversation in your head and guilting yourself and shaming yourself.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Well, thank you so much for giving that away. That's going to be an amazing thing for people. And you guys will have all of the contact information for Dr. Brandy in her speaker profile. So really appreciate you being on the show today. It's so good to see you. And thanks for spending time with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been a joy.
Yeah, for me too.